It was a crisp Monday morning in Washington, D.C. The Capitol building stood gleaming under the sun, its pristine white dome a symbol of American resilience. But inside the ornate halls of Congress, tensions were simmering again. The House Oversight Committee had called for an emergency session following recent revelations about misappropriated intelligence and alleged misuse of FISA warrants. The hearing was supposed to be procedural, dull even, but everyone knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary day. Representative Byron Donalds, the charismatic, sharply dressed congressman from Florida, walked into the chamber with a folder clutched in one hand and conviction in his heart. His face was calm, but his eyes were blazing with intensity. His team had spent weeks combing through documents, whistleblower testimonies, and archived memos. He was ready. Across the room sat Senator Adam Schiff, unusually present at a House session. Schiff, the long-standing congressman-turned-senator from California, had been under fire from conservative circles for years, especially for his role in the first Trump impeachment proceedings and his infamous declarations of having evidence of Russian collusion. Schiff appeared unfazed, his signature smirk intact. But he knew something was different this time. Byron Donalds wasn't just another loud Republican looking for sound bites. He was precise. He was methodical. And worst of all, he had facts. The session began with formalities, gavel pounding, and the usual preamble. Then came the moment everyone had waited for. Chairman James Comer gave the floor to Representative Donalds. Byron leaned into his mic. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to direct my opening statement to Senator Schiff directly." Gasps fluttered through the room. Schiff straightened up slightly, still wearing that smug look. But behind his eyes, he was scanning the angles. What did Donalds have? "Senator Schiff," Byron began, "you sat on the House Intelligence Committee for years. You held one of the most powerful positions in Congress during a pivotal time in American history. And repeatedly on national television and behind closed doors, you claimed, without presenting concrete proof, that the former president was compromised by a foreign adversary." Schiff opened his mouth to respond, but Donalds held up a finger. "I'm not here to argue politics. I'm here for truth. And the American people deserve to know what really happened behind those closed-door sessions." Donald snapped open the folder in front of him and pulled out a stack of declassified documents. "Declassified memos from the Department of Justice," he said, holding them up. "These documents reveal that while you claimed to the American public that you had more than circumstantial evidence of collusion, privately you told intelligence officials you had seen no such evidence." The room erupted in murmurs. Schiff shifted in his seat. "Those statements were made in a different context." "In a different context?" Donalds interrupted. "Senator, the only context that matters is honesty. You went on CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, and swore up and down that President Trump was a Russian asset. And yet, behind the curtain, you admitted there was no proof." Schiff's lips tightened. "Congressman Donalds, the situation was nuanced, but Byron was just getting warmed up. The American people were lied to, manipulated, and divided because of you, because of your choice to weaponize your position for political gain. And you didn't just lie. You cost this country millions in taxpayer dollars. You helped spark an impeachment built on a foundation of fiction." One could hear a pin drop. Byron continued, his voice firm. "The people in my district, the hardworking men and women in Fort Myers, Naples, Cape Coral, they deserve better. This whole nation deserves better. And today, we begin to hold you accountable." Chairman Comer leaned in. "Mr. Donalds, do you have more evidence to present?" Donalds smiled. "Oh, I have plenty more." And just like that, part one of the hearing was over. The storm had just begun. The air in the chamber had grown heavy. The cameras shifted focus to Adam Schiff, who now seemed visibly unsettled. His once casual posture was gone, replaced by a tense rigidity. Even seasoned political analysts watching on C-SPAN could sense it. Schiff was cornered. Byron Donalds took a sip of water and leaned forward again, this time producing a second folder, thicker than the first, with multiple colored tabs marking key segments. "Let's talk timelines," Donalds said, adjusting the microphone. According to this internal email from then FBI Counterintelligence Chief Bill Priestap, sent on March 6, 2017, there was significant doubt inside the FBI regarding the reliability of the Steele dossier, which we now know was the basis for much of the FISA surveillance used to investigate the Trump campaign. Donalds paused. Despite knowing that, Senator Schiff, you continue to validate that same dossier publicly, even praising its credibility in interviews as late as 2018. You propped up a document your colleagues inside the intelligence community were quietly discrediting. He looked up. Why? Schiff shifted. At the time, Congressman, the full scope of the evidence was not yet clear to the public. I did what I believed was necessary. You mean politically necessary, Donalds cut in. Let me ask, were you aware that in October 2016, the FBI had already questioned the primary subsource of the dossier and found their statements to be unreliable? That's classified, Schiff responded quickly, too quickly. No, it's not, Byron shot back, holding up a printed version of the publicly declassified Horowitz report. It's on page 194 of the IG report. The American people can read it themselves. There were stifled chuckles in the room. Schiff looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene leaned toward Representative Matt Gaetz on the Republican side and whispered, he's roasting him alive. Gaetz nodded without looking away, eyes glued to Donalds. Byron didn't flinch. Let me remind this committee and the American people of something important. Lives were ruined because of this witch hunt. Michael Flynn. Carter Page. Individuals who served this nation dragged through the mud without justification. And who pushed the narrative harder than anyone else? He gestured toward Schiff. Senator Adam Schiff, who claimed in 2017 that he had direct evidence of collusion, who refused to release full transcripts of witness testimony that contradicted his narrative until forced to do so. You sat on truth and chose silence. Schiff tried to compose himself. This is political theater. Is it? Donalds replied. Because if I'm reading these FBI communications, DOJ memos, and transcripts correctly, it's a documentary. The audience behind the glass walls of the hearing room, staffers, reporters, even tourists, was silent. The only sounds were the clicks of journalists typing furiously on laptops and pens scratching on notepads. This was history unfolding. Donalds continued, now showing slides on the monitors. Slide 1. Schiff claiming in March 2017 on MSNBC that he had evidence beyond circumstantial. Slide 2. His private testimony just 2 months later, where he admitted under oath that he could not confirm any collusion. He stopped and faced Schiff directly. You lied. Repeatedly. Boldly. And millions believed you. Millions still do. Because the media gave you a microphone and you never hesitated to use it. Schiff opened his mouth, but this time he had no words. Chairman Comer interjected. The committee will recess for lunch. We will reconvene in 1 hour. As lawmakers rose from their seats, a buzz of murmurs filled the room. Schiff stayed seated, clutching a pen he hadn't used once. Donalds stood, shook a few hands from fellow representatives, and left the room, his confidence unwavering. Reporters chased him down the hallway, questions flying like arrows. Congressman Donalds, do you believe Senator Schiff should face formal charges? Should Schiff be expelled from the Senate? Will you introduce a resolution to censure him? Byron paused, turned, and simply said, accountability is coming. One fact at a time. The Capitol cafeteria was buzzing, but not with the usual lunch chatter. All eyes were glued to TV monitors replaying Byron Donalds' dismantling of Adam Schiff in real time. Conservative outlets were already running headlines like, Donalds delivers devastating blow to Schiff's credibility, and Facts versus Fiction, the reckoning of Adam Schiff. Even more surprising was the stir among moderate Democrats. In hushed corners, aides and even a few representatives voiced concern. Schiff had long been their go-to voice of certainty during the Russia saga. But now even they were starting to question. One floor above, Schiff sat alone in his Senate office. His staff had offered coffee, water, even a moment away from the cameras. He declined it all. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because for the first time in years he couldn't spin his way out. Facts were facts, and Donalds had them stacked like bricks. Meanwhile, Byron Donalds reviewed the next set of documents with his legal counsel and staff. His voice was calm, composed. We go deeper now, he said. We show not just the lies, but the impact. When the hearing reconvened at 1 p.m., the room was even more crowded. The public gallery had filled. Former intelligence analysts, former Trump officials, and even progressive think tankers had filed in. Something about this felt bigger than politics. This was a reckoning. Chairman Comer gave the floor again to Representative Donalds. This afternoon, Byron began, I want to talk about consequences. He brought up a new display, a collage of headlines and victims. This, he said, gesturing, is the human cost of misinformation. Carter Page, denied jobs and slandered nationwide. Michael Flynn, financially and emotionally broken by legal warfare. Regular Americans who lost faith in government because of a narrative that was never supported by solid evidence but was championed endlessly by Senator Schiff. He held up a printed transcript. Here is your own interview with CNN on July 23, 2017, where you stated, quote, "There's clear evidence of the Trump campaign colluding with the Russians." But here, Byron flipped to another document is your closed-door testimony to the House Intel Committee just 5 days later, where you said, "I cannot confirm any direct coordination." Gasps again. Senator Schiff, Donalds asked, "How do you reconcile those two statements?" Schiff looked directly at him, but for once his voice faltered. In the heat of political messaging. "Ah, so you admit it was political messaging," Donalds said sharply. "I did not say that." "But you did," Byron replied. "And it's on the record." The chairman leaned forward. Let the record reflect that Senator Schiff acknowledged engaging in political messaging. Schiff's eyes widened, but he didn't protest. He was spiraling. Byron turned to the audience. The American people expect transparency, not theatrics. And when one of our own uses a position of power to manipulate public perception with unverified claims, there must be consequences. He then turned back to the committee. "Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce a motion for a formal ethics investigation into Senator Schiff's conduct during his time as chair of the House Intelligence Committee." A silence. Then Comer responded, "Motion received. The committee will consider it in accordance with procedure." Gasps and murmurs filled the room again. Schiff stared ahead, frozen. The gavel came down. "We are adjourned until tomorrow morning." As Donalds exited the chamber, journalists flooded him with questions again. His response was simple, powerful. "This isn't about party. This is about truth. And no one, not even a U.S. senator, is above accountability." Back in his office, Schiff's aides closed the door gently behind them. The senator sat in his chair, defeated for the first time in years. The mask had cracked and the world had seen it. Morning sunlight streamed through the Capitol dome, but the mood inside the halls of Congress was anything but bright for Senator Adam Schiff. News of the ethics investigation motion launched by Byron Donalds had exploded overnight across networks and social media. The hashtag Schiff collapse was trending nationwide. Left-leaning pundits scrambled to downplay the damage, framing it as political revenge. But even they couldn't ignore one haunting truth: Schiff hadn't answered a single factual challenge. Every confrontation from Donalds was met with dodges, pivots, or silence. And now, the American people were watching closely. Inside Schiff's office, his chief of staff nervously handed him a report. "Sir, 2 Democratic senators have released statements calling for a full and fair review of all evidence presented by Congressman Donalds." Schiff glanced at the names: Senator John Tester, Senator Kirsten Sinema. Not Firebrand's moderates. The center was beginning to wobble. If that crumbled, so did his defense. Meanwhile, Byron Donalds prepared for the final day of the hearing. He had one last objective, not just to expose the truth, but to set the standard for how facts should triumph over politics in American governance. When the session resumed, cameras rolled in record numbers. Reporters from BBC, France 24, Al Jazeera, and Japanese media had taken seats. Even foreign governments were watching how the United States handled what many were calling the Schiff accountability hearing. Donalds didn't open with papers this time. He spoke plainly. Today is not about revenge. It's not about Republicans versus Democrats. It's about restoring credibility. He turned to the committee. When those in power deliberately distort intelligence, deceive the American people, and vilify innocent citizens to pursue political gain, we all lose. Trust is the currency of democracy, and when that's gone, so is the republic. Then he pivoted to a large video monitor. "Let's hear from the victims." The screen lit up. First, Carter Page speaking via video from his home. "I was called a traitor. I lost friends, job offers, and years of peace." And Senator Schiff pushed it. He pushed it long after the FBI knew I wasn't guilty of anything. Then, Michael Flynn's son, tearfully recalling how his family was shattered. "My father served this country for decades. He pleaded guilty to end the nightmare, not because he was guilty, but because he was broke and broken." Donalds allowed the silence to sit. The human cost of lies was now undeniable. He turned to Schiff again. "Senator, do you wish to apologize?" Schiff looked straight ahead, then softly muttered, "If any actions I took caused undue harm." "I regret that." "Undue harm?" Donalds repeated. "Sir, your words were used to justify surveillance on Americans, to push a narrative that fractured this country. Undue harm doesn't cut it." Suddenly, a surprise came. Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat, stood up. "Mr. Chairman," he said, "while I disagree with my colleague Mr. Donalds on many policies, I cannot ignore the facts he's presented. I support a bipartisan review of these issues, and I thank him for his diligence." Gasps echoed across the room. A Democrat crossing the aisle? This wasn't just a takedown anymore. It was a tectonic shift. Donalds nodded respectfully. Thank you, Congressman Khanna. That's what this nation needs. Truth over tribe. The chairman banged his gavel. This committee will now proceed to vote on whether to forward the ethics investigation to the Senate Rules Committee. The result? Yes, 11. No, 6. The motion passed. Schiff sat still, lips pursed, as the implications settled in. For the first time in his career, he wasn't just under scrutiny. He was under official investigation. Outside the Capitol, reporters descended like a storm. Byron Donalds walked out with calm authority. When asked what this meant for the future of Congress, he answered, "Let this be the beginning of a new era. One where truth is louder than spin. One where integrity matters again." The days that followed were like a political earthquake, aftershocks rumbling through every branch of government, every news cycle, every living room conversation in America. Byron Donalds had not just questioned Adam Schiff, he had shifted the narrative. Mainstream networks had no choice but to acknowledge it. Even CNN's Jake Tapper admitted during a primetime segment, Congressman Donalds did what few have managed in Washington. He presented documented facts, calmly, thoroughly, and without malice. And those facts have raised serious concerns about how intelligence was politicized. The Senate Ethics Committee, now under pressure from the public and members of both parties, convened an emergency panel to review the evidence forwarded from the House. Schiff was called to testify again, but this time not as a star witness. This time as the subject. Protesters lined the sidewalks outside the Capitol. But these weren't the typical red versus blue crowds. Signs read things like, "We deserve the truth. Stop weaponizing intelligence. Facts, narratives." Inside the hearing room, Schiff looked visibly aged. His once confident posture now seemed defensive. His voice, once sharp and declarative, was shaky and legalistic. He tried to defend his past actions. At the time, the intelligence community believed there were serious concerns. But the committee, bolstered by Byron's timeline and supporting documents, pressed harder. "Senator," asked one ethics member, "are you aware that your statements went far beyond what even the CIA and NSA had verified at the time? I may have used stronger language to emphasize the severity of potential risks." Stronger language? Or unfounded conclusions presented as facts to the American people? Schiff's mouth opened, but no words came out. Back at Byron Donalds' office, the atmosphere was quiet and focused. He wasn't celebrating. There was no gloating, no victory dance. He knew this wasn't the end of something, it was the start of a new standard. Later that week, Byron was invited onto 60 Minutes. Sitting across from the host, he was asked a key question. "What do you hope comes from all of this?" Byron leaned forward slightly, choosing his words carefully. "I hope Americans, whether left, right, or independent, start demanding transparency. I hope Congress becomes less about winning headlines and more about serving the people who put us here. And I hope that anyone who dares to lie to this country with the weight of office behind them knows there will be consequences." The clip went viral overnight. Meanwhile, Schiff's political support eroded quickly. Key donors pulled out. Endorsements were withdrawn. He was removed from 2 Senate subcommittees pending the ethics probe. And whispers began to circulate in California. Would Schiff even run for re-election? Weeks later, the Senate Ethics Committee released a preliminary report. Senator Schiff knowingly and repeatedly made public statements not supported by classified briefings or verified intelligence. These statements contributed to public confusion and undermined national trust in congressional oversight. They stopped short of expulsion but recommended formal censure. And so, on a crisp Monday morning, the Senate chamber filled for a historic vote. C-SPAN broadcast it live as senator after senator, Democrat and Republican alike, stood and cast their votes. Adam Schiff censured. A formal rebuke now permanently etched into the Senate record. When the gavel fell, the camera briefly panned to Schiff. His face was unreadable. But in Florida's 19th district, Byron Donalds stood before a cheering town hall, greeted not just with applause, but with respect. "I didn't come to Washington to make headlines," he told the crowd. "I came to make a difference. And this is just the beginning." A young man in the crowd shouted, "Run for Senate." Donalds smiled. He didn't answer. But the fire in his eyes said everything.